Welcome back, everybody. I am Wayne Hoffman, President of Idaho Freedom Action, and we're joined by Glenneda Zuiderveld from Southern Idaho, the only state senator from, well, really the only state legislator from the South who is the pro-liberty legislator with a really good voting record. How you doing? A freshman, no less. How's that been for you?
Oh, thanks, Wayne. It's been a very interesting journey, but no regrets. It's been good. A lot of work and a lot of learning, but it's been very, very good. I'm honored to be in this position for the people.
Now, what I'm wondering is, do the folks in your region in southern Idaho understand the difference between your voting record and some of your colleagues?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I've actually gotten a few comments from some of them that says, make sure that you don't have a high IFF score.
Oh, no
So
kidding.
yes, no kidding. They have said that to me, and I says, well, it's either that or a high IACI score. So
So do
I'll,
they
I'll
get
go with
that?
I'll go with the freedom score.
I mean, they don't want, I mean, do they want you to have a high IACI score?
Um, Probably because majority of them here do have 100% with IACI, and I'm the only one that has a high freedom score.
But I mean, what I wonder about is, so, I mean, your constituents have to understand that there's a difference between the two and what that means, do they?
The constituents do. Yes, they do. Very much so. And actually they look to that as like a voter guide, that the score. And it's actually helped them to go and actually do research on their own, find out for themselves, because they're just not taking anybody's word for it. They're actually going to go and look. And so my constituents, yes, they do know the importance and the difference between the scoring.
Will that translate into additional Liberty legislators getting elected from southern Idaho in the future, from Twin Falls County, Cassia County, Minidoka County, Gooding? Would you expect that in the future, that perhaps you'll see more pro liberty, pro freedom legislators, that maybe they'll start asking questions about why there's such disparity between you and your colleagues, or do you think that there's still some work that has to be done to explain that?
I think we're on the right track. I definitely see people paying attention, and they're I see people interested in running in all different kinds of offices, because from county commissioner on up to statewide offices, because of this, they're feeling encouraged and hopeful, and they love that we're out there not talking at them, but trying to just show them what we're doing there. And it really is making a big difference here in the Magic Valley, in my opinion. I really do think people are really starting to get encouraged, and are always asking, where can they help? What can I help? And so we just did a town hall here for me last week, and I had 62 people show up just for me. And I did a slideshow explaining everything that we voted on, what our budget is, and just the good, bad, and ugly, the whole session of being a freshman. And 62 people showed up. And I have two more events that have, from that event, they said, can you come to our area and do that? And so I'm just going on a little road show with my slideshow, and people are, they're getting engaged. And a lot of it does have to do with the Idaho Freedom Foundation.
Well, thank you. What are the questions that you're getting when you go to those town halls? What issues are they talking about?
In our area, they're very concerned about our budget. I think the budget is very concerning to them, especially where our federal is at, and that we're basically about 44% counting on the federal to pay our budget. So that's a very big concern. Water issues are huge in our area, so that's been another big concern. And then they're also very concerned about your social issues, like your transgender, your Medicaid is a very big concern, the library bill. And so those are some of the big things that I hear from them. Also, a lot with immigration is another big concern around here.
Do they understand that, like, for example, do you hear people talk about House Bill 24? Do they ask questions about that Idaho launch program, and what do they say?
So actually, yes, that's brought up a lot. And I was actually at an event this morning and with some of the other legislators in my area. And of course, they all voted for it, and I did not vote for the launch bill. And it depends on what crowd I'm in. If they're, you can kind of read the crowd and see if they are strongly for the launch or not. But I'd have to say your individual citizens, just your neighbors, your friends that you've went to school with, they're all very concerned about that. They feel it's like a Medicaid expansion, but in education. They think that once this program comes in, it will never be removed. That it will come up for what do we do with Medicaid? We did a referral. So we were doing a referral and we were looking into it. And they think, well, in 6 years, it won't go away because we can't get rid of Medicaid expansion. So there's no way we can get rid of this program as well. So that's kind of a concern. And they don't like the fact that we are taking their hard-earned dollar to pay for the college of somebody else because they've all done it on their own. And so when you're with the individual citizen, that's their concern. But when you go to the others where there's maybe more of your college and bankers and stuff like that, they're all for the launch program.
Really, they like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of taking money from one person and giving it to somebody else.
Yeah. There was even some disappointment that they moved the lodging part away from that bill, that we amended it and took the lodging out of that. So,
Yeah, the
which I thought was
original version.
interesting.
Yeah, for folks who haven't paid close attention to the original version was $8,500, and it was going to pay for, including tuition, it would also pay for room and board. And the Senate, they didn't quite amend the bill. They passed a trailer bill, a separate bill that made amendments to the original bill, which was kind of a squirrely way to go about doing that. But so now it's $8,000, and it can't pay for housing.
For room and board, yeah, or for the dorms. Yeah.
For the dorm, yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't
Yeah.
make the
So,
bill better. But it's still a problem.
right. And so those are just some of the things that I get from the different crowds of people that I'm with. So, more of your corporations and people that get a lot of your government assistance anyway, they're all for it and so thankful for it. But your individual citizen, taxpayer, retiree, are completely disappointed that passed.
Is there a bill that you voted for or against that people have come to you and said you voted wrong on that? You should have voted a different way.
Not yet. I haven't. And I've been to a few town halls, and most of them are really upset over the 314 or the ESA bill, the Education Savings Account, or the transgender. And most of the time, I just sit up there smiling because they're angry with those who actually voted, against those things instead of for them. And so I haven't had anybody yet.
Good. What was the hardest bill that you voted either for or against that you think people might ask you about in the future that deserves some explanation?
I've been ready for them to ask me about the Senate Joint Memorial one on I call it the amnesty bill, and they swear it's not amnesty, and until I educate them. But in my area, I really am expecting them to come after me on that one. I'm the only one in my area that voted against it. And so I do understand the issues that we have here with our agriculture and getting workers. I understand that, but I just cannot vote for something that is going to basically give amnesty. Because when you look at the definition of amnesty and then the last paragraph in the memorial, that's exactly what we're doing. Is we're saying that as long as you don't have any other crimes against you, just the fact that you came here illegally, we're gonna ignore that you're going to pay a fine, and then you can come here and work, and that's amnesty. And so I do, I see that coming for me. That's probably one of the number one bills that will come after me. And that's not even a bill, it's a memorial.
Yeah, it was a memorial, and so it didn't have any force of law. Basically, what you were doing was so they used to call them hankies in the wind. You send a message to Congress. And supposedly, Congress will carefully consider the statement that was made by Idaho and other states in their memorials. It doesn't do anything except present the state's position on a particular, or the legislature position on a particular issue. In that particular case, what they were doing was they were saying, Congress, do something about illegal immigration, which is fine. But then it has this one, was it a sentence or two sentences? It wasn't very much, but it said
That was just a small paragraph. Yep.
Yeah, that we were accepting of the idea that a person should be able to come to the U.S. illegally and pay some kind of a fine and be able to stay, and that is the very definition of amnesty. And the other thing that I kind of wonder about it, do people understand that this whole immigration issue has become a thing over the course of the time in which the U.S. and various states have discouraged youth employment? And so where you and I grew up working on farms and working around either crops or livestock, that's discouraged now under various state and federal, even Idaho. Idaho, you can work on a farm as long as it's a family-owned farm when you're young, but you can't go and work on the neighbor's farm because the state law prohibits that. And
And and I don't know when that changed, Wayne, because when I was growing up, I was 14 years old, that you were able to get your Cinderella driver's license as long as you were home before dark. And I was a waitress at the age of 14. I was a waitress at the local truck stop. And so I don't know why we stopped that. And that was making us have a purpose, you know, showing responsibility. You were able to go to school, sports, and work. You just figured that all out. And we've removed that from children. And I do think that's part of our big problem today. A lot of our work issues isn't from the lack of workers, it's we're not motivating them to work.
Yeah, it's always been kind of strange to me. And I remember one time I was down in I don't think it was Twin Falls, it might have been Burley, but there was a restaurant that had a sign on the door that said, please forgive the fact that we're having trouble, waiting tables and getting your order in very quickly because we're having trouble finding workers. And there's been that all. I see that still. I'm in Coeur d'Alene right now, and I see it in Coeur d'Alene. I've seen it in Idaho Falls. I've seen it in Chalice. I've seen it just everywhere. And meanwhile, there's some kid, sitting at home watching Netflix or playing video games, and you wonder why, as a matter of public policy, we encourage that kind of behavior by virtue of saying, oh, it's too dangerous for you to work in a restaurant because it's in the same place that they have knives and meat cutters. And so you couldn't have kids working around that. They can't bus tables. They can't work the cash register. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we sort of accepted that the Fair Labor Standards Act applies to Idaho. And so anything with regard to the federal wage and hour laws and the worker safety laws apply to Idaho because we've just accepted that to be true, and it's not. It's unfortunate that our Department of Labor and other states have just discouraged that by virtue of accepting federal edicts when it comes to youth employment. Arkansas, I think
we're good at.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say we're good at creating our own problems.
Yeah, we do, and that brings up another bill that I'm sure is going to come up, and I've been debating with Trent Clark on Facebook about the cell phone bill, which I'm sure you're going to get a certain level of crap for too. But I mean, the reason why kids are on their phones all the time is because their parents are too busy working because they're paying their taxes to fund these programs, and so you dismantle the family unit, you discourage work, And so kids are sitting at home on their phones. And so you're going to pass a law that says we're going to tell people exactly what kind of content you can access on phones. Has anyone asked you about that, Bill?
Not yet. I've been expecting that one too, which, is kind of surprising that they haven't asked about that. Either they're not following real closely on that one, or that's not a big concern. I have no idea. But it is interesting. I think that we're in a time and age too that parents are so tired from working two jobs and trying to keep things going that it's easy to put their kid on a phone to kind of watch them so they can just have a moment of just relaxing, or I don't know what the case is, but um, I do think that we've again created another problem, and it's just not even on the government side, but as parents, we've kind of created this problem where kids are dependent on the cell phones. They're almost going through withdrawals if you take them away.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give government very much grace for that, because if you look at the family unit going back 70 years or more, there was a time when a single breadwinner could pay for all your household expenses, and now you have two breadwinners in a household, and they're barely making the amount of money they were in the 1950s when adjusted for inflation, and half their
Right.
money is going to taxes. Half their money is going to taxes. So you do create that problem, and then because you're too busy to prepare a home cooked meal for kids, you give them some crap and hand them a phone, and that feeds their mind and their stomachs with crap, which
With
results
junk.
in
Yeah.
with junk, which results in societal problems. And also, if you're not feeding your stomach with good things, it affects your brain, it affects your mental health. And then they go to another government program where they put them on some kind of prescription drug or something. So all this stuff, are problems that you can tie directly back to government.
Right. Which is leading to the next thing I think is a big concern going into 2024 is I was sitting through a lot of presentations. Kate, I'm on the Health and Welfare Board and committee, and I'm also on the Ag Committee. And you hear a lot about the mental health and behavioral health. I even had a couple presentations in Ag on farmers' mental health and behavioral health. And I thought was really interesting because farmers, yeah, they might have some downtimes because you're dealing with, storms coming through, taking out your crop, down equipment. But for most part, our farmers are probably some of the most healthy people because of the hard work, being in the sun, and yet they're trying to push in this behavioral health. They're putting that verbiage into a lot of presentations, which kind of concerns me because then what is next? And then I'm also concerned, because what is the definition of behavioral health? What is the definition of mental health? We haven't defined that. So it's basically whatever they say they want it to be.
So do you see a movement to expand government programs in the mental health and health and welfare department even more?
Yes.
You're at the front
Yes, I
line of
do.
that, really.
Yes,
And
I do.
do people understand? I mean, just being on the health and welfare committee, there was supposed to have been a discussion about whether Medicaid expansion should continue. And I gather that you didn't actually have a vote on that, but the committee chairman wrote a letter that said that Medicaid expansion should continue, not on behalf of the committee, even though that's what the statute requires. Is there a possibility that next year there's going to be some conversation about whether Medicaid expansion is doing us any favors, if it's living within the cost constraints that were supposedly going to be in place when we talked about passing it 5 years ago?
I think that I don't know what we're going to do with that because what is it, 90 cents on the dollars coming from the feds? So right now they're calling the shots on all of it. And we don't have enough people to stand up against that and just say no. I think I was the only one on the Senate side and the committee that did not refer it. And it didn't go to a vote. But they're supposed to be taking able-bodied people off of that, which concern of mine is they're going to remove people from it, but yet our budget went up. So if they're removing people, why would the budget go up? That was and that was never they never answered that question. I
Are
don't
you
think
going to
they
be
even
part of
know.
the? Are you going to be part of the discussion when when the Medicaid task force or working group or interim committee or whatever it is they're having over the summer is considering how to deal with Medicaid and cost containment and stuff, or are you disinvited from that effort?
Well, I did have the pro tem come up and ask me if I would like to be on that, and I said yes. But I haven't heard any more, so I don't know if they just haven't gotten it together, or maybe I'm already voted off that island. I don't know. So we'll see. I'll let you know. But I was originally when they did come up and ask me originally.
It sure would be nice because there is a real need to. I mean, the other thing that doesn't get talked about very much is that about 60% of the psychotropic drugs, meaning depression and anxiety drugs, prescribed in Idaho are to Medicaid recipients. And that's why you have people that, you look at them and they've got that 1,000-yard stare like they've been off to war. That's because they're on these medications that don't really do them any favors. And
Right. It just
somebody was
numbs them. Yeah. It's just putting a Band-Aid on something that's needing a little bit more help than that. But to me, that's kind of almost, I know this is going to probably come back at me, but it's almost like a lazy way of taking care of something because, they do have a need and it takes a little bit more work to get in there and help them to figure it out. Maybe they're depressed because they can't find a job or they just don't have the motivation to work. We kind of remove people's purpose, and we are kind of purpose driven people. We like it when people count on us for something to get up and go and do something. And again, we've removed that from society. And then we want to fix it with putting them on drugs that give them fuzzy brains. And it just kind of escalates from there.
It does, and that's the reason why is that people look and they go, well, California was destroyed by drugs, and that's actually not quite accurate. California drugs were on the tail end of that. It was people, you took away their productivity, and the only thing they had left was drugs and alcohol, and so now they're pooping on sidewalks and stuff because they've got nothing else going for them. It's just really, and any society can be like that if you take away their productivity and their ability to engage in commerce and feel as if they're contributing and giving something back and have something to live for. And we of course destroyed the education system and all those things that have happened in California. That's the canary in the coal mine. And a lot of the things they've done in other states, they're doing right here in Idaho. So it's just a matter of time. And then those people who are dependent on government just want more government so that they can be less productive and less prosperous. That's a real shame.
It's like we're removing their self-worth. Yeah, they don't see their self-worth. And I think that's what we're seeing in society is if they can't see their self-worth and we're not helping them to see that, their giftings and what they're able to do. And just keep on. It's almost like giving the kid a phone. Let's give them a drug. Let's keep them occupied over here.
Yeah, that's a lagging indicator. So if you see kids on their phones all the time, that's a lagging indicator of something worse going on. The family unit being broken down, the parents too busy doing other things, working to pay their tax bill so IACI can train employees for some other business, and on you go. It's a lagging indicator of what's really going on in society. So, you also being on the Health and Welfare Committee, do the members that you serve with understand just how despotic government was when it came to COVID? I mean, one of the things that really got you, you were interested in being in the Senate before, but I think you were pretty active and vocal about, what was going on with the COVID policies that the state of Idaho was reinforcing through the Department of Health and Welfare. Do they understand how bad that was?
I think they understand how bad it was, and I think there might be a little bit of pride where you don't want to admit that you realize how bad it was, or that maybe you've been fooled to think it was bad and it wasn't bad. And so I do think that they realize that COVID was bad and it had one agenda only, and that was to get the ARPA money and get the COVID money. I do think that they realize that.
So what's the one thing that you want to do in the 2024 legislative session?
I have a few things that I'd like to do. One of the things I'm really concerned about, and I'm not sure how to go about it, is I would like to come up either with a memorial or a resolution bill, I don't know, to actually protect our state sovereignty against the federal government. Something that states that we understand our state sovereignty is over the federal and that we're going to do everything to protect it. So that's one thing I would like to look into, and I've been researching. And another thing is, like I said, I'm concerned about the mental health issues that are coming forward. And as I'm looking at everything, there's really nothing defined saying exactly what is mental health. And so I'm looking into maybe working with a team of people that maybe we can come in and make a definition of those, so that when bills and stuff coming forward, it's just not a free for all. You know, they can, whatever they decide mental health is, that's what it is. But bring some actual doctors in to help describe and make a definition of mental health.
They've actually changed it. They don't talk about mental health anymore. They talk about behavioral health.
Behavioral health. Yeah, see, it's already changing, and so it would be nice to have that definition, mental and behavioral health, a definition of that.
And it's really weird because really about 1 or 2% of the total population actually has mental health problems. But like I said, when you've got 60% of the folks on Medicaid who are on psychotropic drugs, that says there's something just really off now. And
right.
And I don't think policymakers fully appreciate just how bad that situation is and how much worse they're making it.
Right. And then the other thing that I would like to work on real quick too is our issue with the wind turbines on our public lands. This really is more than just green energy. It's an invasion of our public lands. And so hopefully I can, work with people that maybe we can keep that from coming in.
It's so bad. I mean, you look at there are places around the West where you drive at night, as I do a lot of driving, and all you see is a big row of flashing red lights. And man, it's just terrible. I mean, not only that, but I mean, there's nothing environmentally friendly about any of that stuff, which is kind of funny. I remember when I worked for Bill Sally when he was a member of Congress, and the environmentalists were actually split on wind turbines back then because they were worried about birds, birds smacking into those turbine blades. And now they're all in on the wind turbines. They want as many of them as you can possibly get. It's just kind of crazy.
Oh, it is. And then this is going to be the largest project on public land. All of them are on private property. This is the first one that'll be on public lands, and then the size of them are going to be twice as big as the ones that you see now. And we're going to have a total. Yeah, so in Lava Ridge, in Jerome, there's around 400 of these 750 foot turbines, and then in my district over in Salmon Falls, so as the bird flies, you're looking maybe 50 miles apart. There's going to be another 280 of those that they're proposing, again on public lands, and that's not including the base and the storage for all the batteries and the transmission lines, and so it's a big deal around here.
Yeah, it's really bad. Any other closing thoughts on what it's like to be a Liberty legislator in a legislature that's filled with a bunch of leftists?
You know what? We need more people. I really want to encourage people to get more engaged in their politics and their government, because you truly are our boss. You guys need to realize that we're seeking your vote, which makes you our boss. And people are always afraid to come up to me and say something because they don't want to be disrespectful. And I said, the only time that you would be disrespectful to one of us is if you were just flat out calling us, cuss words and names. But I says, but when you're asking us a question, we should never be down talking to you or talking down to you, because those are legitimate good concerns, and you should never be afraid to come and confront us and ask us questions on why we voted the way we did. And if we're not ready to give a reason for the votes, then you might need to look for somebody else to replace us. You know, I feel like I'm your employee. And if I'm doing a good job, you'll rehire me next year. And if I'm not, then fire me. That's how I see it. And the power really does belong to the people, and they need to start taking that back, because I witnessed a lot of really poor decisions. They have no problem spending money, spending 44% of the broke federal dollar. I mean, they expanding all these programs. That was never the original intent of our government, to be these charities. I've had a couple of people come in that were wanting me to vote for, at that time, the driver's license bill for illegals and the restricted driver's license. And I gave them a lot of reasons why I was not able to do that. One is, you're wanting to break my oath to uphold the Constitution. And he says, well, this is like a mission field. We want to help those that are less than us. And I said, that's never been the government's position. I said, if you want to help them, that's your position as a personal, your personal thing. You can go and do a mission field and do that, or the church can do that. But I says, you don't go and take somebody else's tax dollars and you're going to go decide where you're going to be charitable with it. That's not the intent of the government. And that's not where I'm going to go with that. And so I've just really been trying to encourage people to get involved in their government, because otherwise you're going to get people who have no problem being very charitable with your money.
Well, maybe some of your ideas about the size, scope, and proper role in government will rub off on some of your colleagues, some of the people down south, because we sure need that.
I hope so, because I bring it up every time, because I don't know how this is going to end well for us. Whether they're going to have to cut 44% of the programs when that federal money's gone, or go along with them and be on the digital currency. The legislation is going to have a lot of serious, hard decisions to make when that comes to be.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Well, Glenneda, thanks for being with us again today, and thanks for all you do and for a fantastic voting record. Well done.
Well, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it.